September 2nd, 1994. It was the middle of the afternoon. The boys were in the house with me. It was a nice day, but I was getting ready to go out for dinner and a movie with my husband. So I had to figure out a strategic way to be able to take a shower and get ready with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I had to make sure the house was all locked up. And I wasn't gonna take a long time, but I thought a brilliant way to do it would be to get some sippy cups and some crackers and just try to figure out a movie. And then I looked across the street and the lady kitty corner from me must have been having some tree work done. And I think they were taking a whole tree down, I'm not really sure, but it's because it was a big truck that all the debris was going into. So Uncle Mike had given Sean a couple of videos about like earth movers and trucks and dump trucks and how they excavate different areas, and Sean wore this videotape out. He loved this videotape. We watched it all the time. So I thought, well, this would kind of hold his interest for a little bit. So I said, oh, look what the man's doing. And he's speech and language impaired, but he kind of thought that might be fun. He kind of looked at it. So I kind of set him by the table, both boys, and my youngest son also. And then I got in the shower. And I wasn't in there very long, probably about 5-10 minutes at the most. And I got out, got dressed, and I walked out from the bathroom into the dining room where the table was, where the boys were sitting, looking out the window, watching this chipper and the work they were doing. And there was nobody there, and everything was quiet. And then I looked down the street, and we're almost at the corner. And you could see a couple of cars like parked kind of almost so that you could get into the street. And I saw a couple guys get out of the cars, and I thought, well, I wonder if somebody got hurt. And again, kind of cleaning up, getting ready, doing my thing around the house. But now I'm getting real nosy. I'm looking out the window a lot. I opened the front door and locked the screen so I could look out. And I thought, well, if someone got hurt, you would see an ambulance or some kind of medical personnel there or something. Well, maybe they took him away in a car real fast to it, and now they're doing an investigation if he hurt himself, and hopefully he didn't, like cut off his arm or something. I thought, I just hope everything's okay. And the more cars kind of congregated and more people got out of the cars and more people were looking around. And for some reason, and I don't know who this was, I remember a lady coming up after a while and asking me if I had seen anything that had happened. And I said no. And the thing that really stopped me in my tracks is I opened the front door and I looked out the front door and I noticed that under the chipper shredder, where the chute was leading into the back of the truck, where all the debris would have went, there was like quite a bit of what I would consider to be moisture or a puddle or water. And that's exactly what I thought. But I'm like, how would there be water there? Then I realized that something really bad had happened, or I assumed something really bad had happened. So I walked outside, and again, never in my life, and hopefully never again, I could smell blood like that, the tinny smell of blood, like a metallic smell. And I was, at that point, realized that as much as you didn't want to think about this happening, there's a possibility that this poor young man literally was sucked into that machine and ended up in the back of that truck. A little while after that, I went back in the house and tried to keep the kids busy, and I was real concerned if my kids had seen it, but my son seemed fine. He was watching the movie, he didn't say anything, and he is speech and language impaired, or was at that time, and he wasn't showing any signs of anxiety or anything, but it horrified me to think that he might have seen something. And then I obviously felt bad because I'm the one that set him up at this table to look out the window to watch. And then a little while later, what was even more awful was you could see these guys show up in like hazmat suits, and they had a stretcher. And I don't know how they did it without me seeing how they did it, because they did it very discreetly. They were literally taking out. And for some reason, I don't know why, but I don't know if they were yellow bags or black bags, but they were literally going in the back end of this chipper and taking out bags and tying them, and very carefully and respectfully, I noticed, setting them on this gurney in like a row. It was just odd, the calm that was involved in this. Very discreetly handing them in the one hand to the other person. They'd set it in the body bag on this gurney, and they literally lined up these bags. Then at the end of it, they zipped it up, just like what you would if it was someone in there that had expired, and as dignified as they could. And I don't even remember an ambulance taking out the remains. I don't know. I honestly don't know how they did it. I think at that point, I was just kind of trying not to totally freak out, thinking what had just happened. And then I remember after they took this poor young man away on this stretcher, what remained of him, they came back, and for like 3 hours with these certain kind of hoses and a really strong disinfectant, like hosed off and scrubbed and washed and hosed off and scrubbed and washed all of what happened underneath the truck, where all this, puddle was or whatever. But I do remember them using serious, I don't know if they sucked it up in something else. I can't imagine them pushing that kind of stuff down a drain. But they used a big disinfectant kind of system. I don't remember there being news people there right at that time, but there were later. They actually came back the next day to interview me on a little blurb on Channel 7. And I, for some reason, remember some lady coming to the door and confirmed that what I had thought in my worst nightmare did really happen, that this gentleman had gone through this tree harvester, is what I found it to be later. And from what I understand, it could accommodate like a 3 feet around trunks of trees. So it wasn't just like a limb shredder. It would literally accommodate, sadly enough, someone going through it. I would say it was probably a few weeks later. I mean, still within memory. I was in my backyard, and this guy walked up to the back fence because my dog was barking, and I never actually let him in. I just talked to him over the fence. His big thing with me was, do you wear glasses? Have you always worn glasses? What happens when you take your glasses off? Can you see? And I kept saying, I don't know what you're trying to get, because I didn't see anything. I saw the aftermath, unfortunately. And he said, did your son see something? I said, it's a very good possibility, but my son is speech and language impaired. At that time, we're not really sure where he was on the developmental range, but I said, there's no way I will allow my son to be pulled into this at all. I just will not allow him to, he's not gonna be able to testify, he's not gonna be able to give you a statement. If you make any moves in that direction, I will get a lawyer, and this will be the end of the story. And then he kind of switched topics. He said, well, there's a real strong suspicion that this young man was committing suicide. And I mean, without being disrespectful, I kind of laughed and looked at him and said, do you know anyone, and I think he was only in his early 20s, that was that age, that would choose that way to kill himself? I can't even imagine why anyone would think of that. I said, this was a horrific accident. Whether it was due to carelessness or default in the machine, I don't know, and I'll never know. None of us, I think, will ever know unless they can prove it other ways. I said, but there's no way someone that young would want to kill himself in that method. There's just no way. At that point, I had lost respect for whatever this guy was trying to do, and I said, we're done talking. And I said, and I'm sorry for this young man's family. And I said, but my son isn't going to be used in any way, shape, or form in any investigation that's going to be involving this. I said, just so we're clear on that. So, and then he never showed up again. It had to be a little ways as far as time from when it happened, because I don't think anyone would have the audacity to bring another tree chipper into that neighborhood after what happened. But we were walking down the street. We have a lot of neighbors in the area that we were friends with, and I used to take them for walks, or might have even been on the way to a school bus, because we used to meet the school bus at the end of that street. And there was a tree chipper. And I said, "Oh, Sean, look." And for some reason, I remember him looking and saying, "Man, go bye-bye," because that was about the extent of his vocabulary, and it just made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I kept investigating with my son's doctor, what do we need to look out for in case he did see this? But Sean never exhibited no nightmares, no, odd behavior, no crying, no, fear of leaving the house, fear of leaving us. But he did say that, as far as I remember, because I kind of looked and thought, I hope that this was just a fluke, but, maybe he did see something, I don't know. I've asked him to this day, now he's 23. He says, "Mom, I don't remember anything like that. I don't even remember you telling me about that later." Still to this day, I don't know who saw the actual incident, and I didn't hear anything, and no one told me what happened, but I assumed that it was the young woman who lived in the house where they were doing the work. Apparently she was the one, or what we all kind of surmised, she was the one who saw him actually get killed by this thing. It was odd when I was going to work, and again, that was only a couple weeks ago, where I actually saw a Mount Clemens Tree Service truck. And it kind of made me go, oh my gosh, they're back in business, or they never left business or whatever. And I went home that night and Googled it. And, a tree harvester accident, Mount Clemens Tree Service. The only thing I could find was an OSHA report, and it was just a blurb about employee number 1 was something about waving his arms. That's what I found was a weird part. I don't know, made a gesture and then was taken in by the machine. And there was a witness. I thought it was pretty weird at the bottom that the outcome was a fatality, and then something about that was a fracture. I'm like, that's kind of an understatement about what happened to this poor guy. That lady, I don't think ever got over it. I really don't. And it was a beautiful house that they lived in too. Oh my gosh, it was like the envy of the neighborhood. But they didn't stay around too long after that, only about a year, and they were gone, so I don't know. It was pretty terrible.